We're in the United States government book. We're on the last chapter. We're in section 2, and we had to divide it up. We're talking about the citizen, what it means to be a citizen. We went over serving in the military, how important that is, and we went on to voting and also being involved in political parties, those 3 things. And so now we're going to continue with that, and we're going to get into what the citizen as interest groups, how you can be involved in an interest group, and then go on to interest group being lobbyists, maybe lobbyists or certain groups that are interested in certain political stands that are taken, and on to citizen and public opinion polls, and then on to the citizen in the news media, how we can listen to the news media and how we have to be careful about the news media, and then on to the citizen and his character, and other forms of political action too. So, but the citizen and his character, how important it is that we as citizens have righteous character. So, so let's start with the citizen in these interest groups. So, Alex de Tocqueville once said of America, "In no country in the world has the principle of association been more successfully used or applied to a greater multitude of objectives." What are associations? They are basically interest groups. Several groups that represent political interests or concerns. Some of these are pressure groups that try to pressure, politicians and believe in certain interests that they have. And some interest groups are different from political parties, and some are similar to political parties. So, political parties, when you talk about a political party, their political parties are very highly regulated by the government. And interest groups, they don't have any regulations at all. They just have the First Amendment rights that they can actually peacefully assemble, and they can petition the government. An interest group could come and petition and actually, can protest or do whatever, but a political party is regulated by the government. That's very important. Citizens usually belong to only one political party, like if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're one political party, or independent. But you can belong to a lot of different interest groups at the same time if you want to. You can be involved with, whatever interest group. The right to life is important, or that interest group, whatever interest group. So there's many. You can be involved in any. Interest groups often procure the aid of what is called a lobbyist. So we're going to talk about the lobbyist. It's important that you know what a lobbyist is. So what is a lobbyist? A lobbyist is one who represents a special interest group before a political body. Just to know, you're going to need that to know on the test. What is a lobbyist? A lobbyist represents a special interest group, and they usually seek to influence legislative bodies in any way they can, and sometimes they seek to influence the executive branch, and sometimes even the judicial branch. Sometimes they even take courts to case. So not only they go into the 3 branches, they influence executive branch, they seek to influence taken to court, and also bills that go through Congress. So I like this part where it says a lobbyist dates back many years, because these political persuaders, as they were called, they'd wait in the lobby. We're waiting in the lobby for the legislation hall, in Congress. They want to speak to those senators. They want to speak to those congressmen. So the lobbyists would wait around. So they'd say, "Oh, lobbyists, they're out there." And so now we call them lobbyists. They don't have to just wait in the lobby, but they are very active now in the capitals. And some of them are waiting in the lobby. And nowadays, they're usually paid professionals. They know how to lobby. They know how to deal with congressmen and such. And so they're very familiar with the workings of the government, and they know how to effectively influence, those congressmen. Most lobbyists today, they work full-time as a lobbyist. That's their job, and they're paid. And some of them even represent more than one organization. They're used to doing this, and that's their job. There are many organizations of lobbyists, doctors, lawyers, educators, businessmen, labor organizations, religious groups, even government employees. They all are represented by their lobbyists that go to the Capitol, that go, and contact the senators and stuff, especially on certain bills. Their main task is to actively promote legislative beneficial to the groups they represent, and to actively work against legislation to defeat it to those that are detrimental. So they investigate the bills and say, is this going to be good for my group? Is this going to be good for those I'm representative as a lobbyist? Or is it going to be detrimental? So these lobbyists, and they're trained to know. So they, right there during Congress, and the Congress's lobbyists are waiting to talk to them to see what's going on with the bills. So lobbyists often seek to speak with the legislator on an informal time. So they want to get with their lobbyist wants to get with their congressman. They may aid a congressman in preparing for a bill. So they have a congressman and they say, okay, we're supporting this bill. Our group is supporting this bill, so we want to help you prepare this bill. Or sometimes lobbyists even write speeches for congressmen. You know that. Just sometimes they're there just to help them prepare the bill, and other times so lobbyists are very important. So, and they are, very intelligent in all different subjects of government, and a lot of congressmen rely on the lobbyist to tell them what's going on with the people, right? A lobbyist cannot go to speak at the floor of Congress. They can't get up and speak in Congress at all, but they can appear before the committees. So when the bill is going through committees, they can go to the committees and tell them what they are standing for, and tell them why they don't want that bill or why they want that bill to go through. So nowadays, lobbyists are regulated more by the state and federal government. In fact, a lot of times they have to register with the clerk. So lobbyist comes in, has to register with the clerk of the House or the secretary of the Senate, either the Senate or the House of Representatives. But most lobbyists don't do this. So, and when they register, they have to give the names of the people they represent. And they also have to tell how much they're paid for. So they can say what kind of salary are they getting to be this lobbyist. And that's why a lot of them don't register. So there's thousands of lobbyists that are active in Washington now, but only a very small amount of them really register. So, but they still get by. They're still lobbying. Since 1974, certain interest groups wanted to contribute very large amounts of money to certain politicians, and so they passed this law called the Political Action Committee. Basically, this PACs, they said that they were only going to be limited to be able to donate $5,000 to a candidate, which is not very much money, considered a candidate running for office needs a lot of money. And they also said, not only that they had to give money to at least 5 candidates. So, but in recent years, basically, now it's known that a politician needs to have a large sum of money if he's going to be considered to be a serious candidate. So this is, the PACs are not really taken into consideration in many cases. And furthermore, most of the money and support doesn't come through lobbyists, but it comes from individuals. So a lobbyist and who they represent, they give money, but certain individuals that are very, very wealthy give more money than lobbyists do. I like this part. It says, we would do well to remember that our country does not need more laws and needs better men to execute the laws that we have. And William Penn, what does he say from Pennsylvania? He said, I know some say, let us have good laws, and no matter for the men that execute them, but let them consider that though good laws do well, good men do better. I think we went over that. It's so important to have good men. So lobbying can be used for good, but it also can be used for bad. So it's very important that Christians do get involved in lobbying, because they have a lot of power and represented as they go forth and watch the different bills that are going through. It says, honest and well-meaning legislators are often forced to act on a basis of information available to them. So if a congressman doesn't get the information, he can actually go the wrong way on a bill. So lobbyists are important in that. So that's, we went over onto the interest groups, the citizen, and how important it is. Hey, if you're a Christian and you would get into being a lobbyist, that would be awesome, or basically just standing for those groups that are godly groups, not even lobbyists, but being involved as a Christian, to go and stand for or against those things that are those bills that are being brought through the government, through the Senate, and through the House, and those laws. So really get involved. There was a law, I think it was in California, is it 2024? Well, anyway, it was a law that basically said that a baby could be put to death, killed, after the baby was born for 24 days. And so we all went to the Capitol there and said, no, we do not want this bill to go through. This is a horrific bill. And you can always do that. We protested the bill from going through. So now let's talk about the citizen and public opinion. So this is very important too, because there's always, whenever we have someone running for president and such, they always have all these polls they take, opinion polls. Who are the people? Who are the people wanting to vote for? Or they do these polls and say, a lot of people are supporting this candidate, and a lot of people are supporting. How do they know? It's because they take these public opinion polls, right? And so, and this tells what America thinks on certain measures or about certain candidates, right? Opinion polls are also a way to influence our country to take a certain direction. So one thing about opinion polls, to be very, very wary and careful when someone's coming to take your opinion on something, because they're very good at slanting their opinion towards the way they think. So whenever, as a Christian, they'll come to take your opinion, and if they are not, representing godly people, they're not Christians, they will try to get your opinion on something and sway it to another opinion. So to be very careful and wary. They may use what you say to support their cause, even though you're against their cause. So be careful of their questions. Some of their questions are very leading questions. Like here it says, are you in favor of women's choice? And people say, I think women need to have a choice. But really, when they say women's choice, they're saying, are you in favor of abortion? And you say, no. So you have to be very careful of their wording. So let's go on now to the citizen in the news media. This is becoming very important because a lot of our news media has become very liberal and very biased. put forth a lot of, put forth a lot of propaganda, couldn't think of the word propaganda, on, and we have to be careful. The news media may be lying. The news may be putting forth a bias and not presenting everything totally truthfully. So most of our news media now comes from, I like this first part. It says, whether the news comes by way of print, broadcast, or electronic media, we are today surrounded by a great deal of information. The Bible predicted this would happen. In Daniel 12:4 says, many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. That's what's happening with our news media and where we're getting our information. Information is all over the place, especially now that we have the World Wide Web, and we have Facebook, and we have all these personal Twitter and all these things now. Information coming at all different sides for us. So the major way, though, is of our current issues comes through the media, and all of this is the media. It says, as a Christians, we should obey God as Christ commanded in Matthew 10:16. Be ye therefore wise as serpents, and evaluate the information we received. We need to be as wise as serpents and as gentle as doves, and that's really, really the truth. So there's four different things we need to be concerned with here, and this is actually going to be one of your questions. So this is how we can be wise. Number one, we have to realize that most of our information comes from what's called the Associated Press. And this press must basically, it follows through like Time, Newsweek, U.S. News, World Report. They all have the same source of the secular press. Also, if you're on television, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, and CNN, they may have get their information from the same place, and so they have the same slant. It's kind of weird because you look on this the news station, and then another news station from another city, and they're all saying the same exact words. So we are hearing all of this from a same center source, and the same center source may not be totally reliable. That source may be very slanted against conservative Christians, that's for sure, and may be very slanted. So we have to be very careful and realize they're all coming from the same place. So it's like we can turn to ABC, CBS, and go to U.S. News and see this all is going to be secular. They don't have any Christian base, let's just say that. Number two here, the mainstream news media has a distinct bias. The values are driven by our modern media, which is secular and very liberal. And so we're hearing news from a secular worldview, not from a Christian worldview. So they tend to interpret political events from a very humanistic viewpoint rather than a biblical viewpoint. So what does humanistic mean? Well, they'll be basically liberal in one sense. They promote big government. They think the government needs to be involved in everything, and we need to have big government control. That's one humanistic, because they feel that crime and social problems are the fault of society, or the fault of the rich, or the fault of guns, or the fault of drugs, rather than individuals. They do not believe that mankind is deceitfully wicked beyond measure. So they believe that we can make people better by promoting big government and controlling people, or we can make people better by limiting guns or limiting drugs. but they don't get down to the heart of the matter, which is that people become righteous through the grace and love in the midst of faith, I should say, the faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. So they take out, that foundation, that firm foundation, which is Jesus, that Jesus is the answer. They don't believe that Jesus can make people better. And they do not believe that sin is the root. They believe that social problems are the fault of society, not the fault of individuals sinning. So that's humanism. So thirdly is television. Television and, I should say, the videos and media on social networks too, because they'll set forth just a few video clips of something, little sound clips. And they call these sound bites, and that propaganda will get hold of you right away, but then they won't, challenge anything or tell you anything about it. So it's important when you're looking in television and you're viewing television that is this little clip, what's it trying to say? Are they trying to persuade me here with this little video clip? So they have a very unique situation of putting all this information on just a little time period. Also, the fourth thing is that the government usually cooperates with the media. The government needs the media to bring forth official information, right? The government needs the media, and the media needs the government. So they have this symbolic relationship between each other. So when you're getting the information, the media, you look and you'll see a lot of the commercials and such are supported by the candidates or the government. So you have to be very careful when you're watching. It's going to be slanted a certain way. And the government comes in and says, yes, we're going to have this on the media. We're going to bring forth this on the media, the news media. And then basically they're supported by the government in many ways. And so they'll say, okay, let's do this. And it may not be what is truly truth in the midst. So, and an example of this was given here. Let's see. An example, what may appear to be a spontaneous event on the news can actually be a highly scripted, rehearsed event. So they put forth this is the news, breaking news, and they've already scripted it, got it all together the way they want the news to be, and it can be highly scripted, and they rehearsed it over and over and may have put in, AI or put in and changed things the way it really was, so they can do that. Or they do that, not that they can do that. It might be a highly scripted, rehearsed event. So, also, I like this part, it's better to read things first before you see it, because we're likely to be swayed by very winning personalities or dramatic, actors, coming in and trying to affect and derail our thinking on the subject. We like to have those celebrities tell us how to believe, and you don't want to believe the way celebrities believe. Most of them are a total stinking mess. Let's just say that. So, and of course, here's another, your voice can be heard by writing letters to the editor. We don't usually do that now because the newspapers in a sense, but you can get online and you can put your opinions in anywhere. We know that. So let's go on to other forms of political action. And so basically we're told, Jesus tells us that we can be salt and light in our world, and that's important because many issues, political issues that we stand for, we can see that we can either stand for right, especially these days that we're living, we can stand for what's right or we can stand for what is not right. So Christians need to be involved in politics. So if we neglect to register to vote, if we neglect on these issues that our voice isn't heard, and refuse to get involved in politics, we're going to be shirking our Christian duty and our civic responsibility. But our greatest form of political action really is to pray. We went over that last time. So how important it is for us to pray. America, to keep our country from succumbing to these humanistic ideologies, we need to pray and ask God, ask Jesus through the Holy Spirit in us to show us and be discerning of what's happening in politics. Our country needs moral and righteous people to run for political offices and to serve in government. Proverbs 29:2 says, "When the righteousness are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked bears rule, the people mourn." Proverbs also states in 14:34, "Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people." The government always reflects the character of its people. Therefore, our government needs the influence of those who love God and desire to see righteousness reign in our land. This last section here talks about the citizen and his character. So what kind of character do we need? Every citizen has the responsibility to promote righteousness, right? We need to have high personal standards. People do what people see. So if we obtain high standards, then people, those we associate, will want to model that character of integrity that we've set forth as examples of Jesus Christ. So righteousness is our civic duty. Godly living, godly living affects everything. It's righteousness that exalts a nation. Not because we have a great military, not because we have a lot of money, not because we have a lot of technology. These mean nothing without righteousness. Righteousness brings a nation a lasting success. So only righteousness can give us success. So the best thing we can do as citizens is to live out the law of God each day and apply it to our hearts. Our national allegiance, what does it belong to? First, to God, but we also stand for our country and for our Constitution. So when our public officials take office, they promise to uphold what? The Constitution of the United States. That's why we voted for them. We voted for them so that they would stand up, uphold the Constitution. And they even took an oath to do their job, and they swore allegiance to do this, to uphold our Constitution. So what does that mean? That means, first of all, their allegiance to our flag, to our country, and to our Constitution should be utmost for our leaders. So it's our duty to remove such individuals from office, to impeach them or to recall them or to elect them out of their positions if they do not uphold the Constitution of the United States. So remember, that's their job. They have sworn to is to uphold our Constitution. That's why we need to know all about our Constitution. And our founding fathers set forth our Constitution based on the Bible and based on godly values, based on the Lord Jesus Christ, really. As Christians, we have a means where we can remove unfaithful men from their office if they're not doing their job. If they're disloyal, we may remove unfaithful leaders through impeaching them or electing them out or recalling them. Here, President Richard Nixon was actually put forth. He was going to be put forth in impeachment. Instead, he resigned. He didn't go through impeachment process, for what he did in the midst of lies. So obedience, the Christian stand. So in scriptures we're told that our love for God is demonstrated by our obedience. So in Romans 13 it says, God's people are to be submissive to our higher powers in the Lord. In the Lord. So in 1 Peter it says, submit yourself to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king or supreme, or to governors, as unto them that are sent by him, for the punishment of evildoers and for the praise of them that do well. Basically setting forth, setting forth to submit to those authorities in the Lord, right? For it is a will of God that with well-doing ye may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men, as free and not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as for servants of God. So this says forth that we are to be submissive to our authorities in the Lord. But we know that the government is run by sinful human beings. And so we do know in the midst of this that we need to stand for those that are righteous. The Bible gives us example of what to do as Christians when we're called by our government to perform some action that will be contrary. So what happens? What they're saying, what happens when something is contrary to God, our belief system? The Bible gives clear example of what to do when actions of government are contrary to stated law of God. And that they basically brought Daniel and his submissive non-compliance would fulfill. It tells exactly what to do in the Bible. So Daniel, remember Daniel in the lion's den, and Daniel standing up, basically in an honorable way, standing up, for God. And he did not disobey the king, but rather he was honoring God. His conscious effort was to obey God first. So there's 4 different things listed here. These are so important. I think you should write these down. Write these down. These are so important. First of all, number 1, never make a conscious decision to defy authority. Rather decide that you will obey God. So don't say, okay, I'm going to defy you, whatever you say. So don't let defiance be the issue and say, I'm a radical, I'm a revolutionary, I'm against this. But that you are obeying God. So our attitude will be that we will obey God and we will do whatever civil authority asks us, as long as we don't have to disobey our God. So important. So don't just say, okay, I'm defying you, I'm rebelling against you, I hate you, and use all the cuss words like they do in the midst of this. No, you say, I need to stand up for my God, and I'm sorry I can't obey that because my God says I can't obey what you're telling me to do. So this happens even in marriage, where a woman obeying her husband and he tells her to do something that's not godly. So this goes for even children obeying their parents if their parents ask them to do something that's ungodly. But if our government asks us to do something ungodly, we need to stand against that, stand for God. So number 1, don't make the defying authority the issue. Number 2, once you have made your resolve, take the path of least resistance as to honor earthly rulers. So basically it's like, okay, still I'm going to honor you, least resistance. See, Daniel could have protested or been obstinate and all these things towards his authority, but guess what? Those authorities, those kings, they loved Daniel. Even though Nebuchadnezzar threw him into the lion's den and he came forth and everything, he ended up loving Daniel, and or I should say Darius. It wasn't Nebuchadnezzar, it was Darius at that point. So on to 3. If your choice to obey God gets you into trouble with civic authorities, gracefully take the consequences. That's a big one, because basically we're going to suffer for doing right. And when we suffer for doing right and we take it patiently, God is well pleased and our treasures are in heaven. And our testimony goes forth as we stand for the Lord. When we're persecuted, even martyred, people are looking on and they see the bravery we have and see our I should say, courage that we have and the steadfast we have in standing for our God in that situation. So if it comes to that point, to gracefully take consequences. So it says, remember, later Daniel obeyed God and prayed, and it cost him a night with the lions. But the Bible says that when we suffer doing right and take it patiently, God is well pleased. But God did quiet those lions. They never touched Daniel. This last part, godly citizens are important to the well-being of America. Noah Webster once said, Republican government loses half of its value where the moral and social duties are imperfectly understood or negligently practiced. To exterminate our popular vices is a work far more important to the character and happiness of our citizens than any other improvements in our system of education. So basically he's saying the most important thing of our government is our moral and social duties, and our happiness comes from what? Jesus is the answer. Basically it says to look to God. So I'm going to go over these questions and then we'll finish up. And then next video I'll go over Steps to Change America, which is you need to really read that. That's amazing. So let's go over these questions quickly. List some of the ways that we as citizens can influence our country. Okay, that's through all the last two videos. There are quite a few ways. First of all, we can be in the military. Next, we can vote. Next, we can be involved in political parties. The next, we can be involved as lobbyists or in interest groups. The next, we can be involved in political polling. The next, we can go through listening to the news media. We have to be aware of the news media. The most important is by prayer and by our character standing for righteousness. So, number 2, who may vote in the federal elections? All citizens may vote that are over the age of 18 years old. And we have the 15th, the 19th, and 27th. Slaves were freed, and so they could vote. 19th Amendment, women could vote. 26th Amendment, 18-year-olds could vote. Number 3, explain the difference between a closed primary and an open primary. Closed primary only those registered with that political party can vote in that primary. An open primary, both parties can be registered and non-registered, but they have to vote for that primary's candidates. So both parties can be registered. So number 4, what is the difference between the office group ballot and the party group ballot? The office group ballot is a ballot that you're voting for that office, like you're voting for president, you're voting for Senate, you're voting for governor, you're voting for that office. A party group is where you just check the Republican Party and you're voting for all the Republican people on that ballot. So you can basically checks off all the Republicans. That's the party group ballot. Number 5, list 3 main groups of people involved with the political party. Well, first of all, the political party government. Those are the elected officials. The second one is the party organization. Those are the committees and the party chairmen and the workers and that basic unit of the party. And number 3 is the voters, the party voters, the Republic. So if you have the Republican Party government, those are the officials. The organization are the committees and parties and the chairs and the workers. And then we have the voters, the Republican voters that are voting. So, number 6, what is a lobbyist? How are lobbyists influencing in American politics? A lobbyist are those interest groups. They represent interest groups that seek to influence the officials in the office. How are they influential? They monitor legislative action. They basically keep organizations informed to see what is beneficial and what is not beneficial on certain bills. They aid congressmen in preparing bills, and some of them even write speeches for congressmen. They can also appear before congressional committees and influence the committees. So, number 7, give 4 reasons to use scriptural caution when evaluating news media. So, first of all, most news comes from Associated Presses, which basically are our national, international, or same, like ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox. They all have the same jargon. They came from the same Associated Press. So we have to realize that. Number 2, the mainstream media has a very bias. They're very secular and liberal. They're not Christian Bible-based at all. So we have to know that. And they tend to promote humanistic values such as, big government, socialism and such. So number 3, explain the difference between a closed I'm sorry. We're way down here. Number 8, I'm sorry. Why is righteousness important to the preservation of a nation? Because only righteousness brings a nation success, lasting success. If we're not righteous, we're going to fail, we're going to fall, and we're going to cease to be a nation. That's scriptural. Number 9, list 3 guidelines for properly responding to authority when it conflicts with God's commands. So, number 1, so if you are standing and you have to stand against governmental authority because you know it's not godly, how do you do this? Just like Daniel did. First, never make a conscious decision to defy authority. Never stand up and say, you're going to defy authority. Number 2, take the path of least resistance as to honor those earthly leaders. Number 3, if choice to obey God gets you in trouble with authorities, then gracefully take the consequences. So we're done. We're actually done with the book, here. And I'm going to do a couple videos just on this Foundations of American Liberty, and then go on to when you take your Constitution test and go for the Constitution, which is in your book, really quickly, and we'll be done with your government for this year.